Let's get right into it. So the, and sorry if you can't kind of see what we're talking about
All
here,
good.
but you know, one of the, or the kind of theme of this conference obviously is deals, and you guys are doing a lot with specials, and that continues to evolve. But I want to kind of just back up and talk about, for those unfamiliar, you know, the specials kind of plugs right into Foursquare's DNA. I think from the beginning, it's been a great kind of discovery engine. And the whole concept of kind of mobile first that we keep hearing about companies, I think you were one of the first ones to do that in terms of, you know, we've been in this kind of search-centric world for the last, 10 years or so, utilizing the mobile device and the fact that it's portable, it's location-aware, to really be kind of, a discovery engine. So talk a little bit about Foursquare's DNA, kind of the short history and kind of where you are right now, and then we'll get into some of the specifics. But just, for those unfamiliar, talk a little bit about Foursquare and where you're coming from.
So what we like to say at Foursquare is that we're trying to make things that make cities easier to use. And what I mean by that is that we're trying to get people out exploring the cities in which they live or visit and incentivize them to do so. So it's a little bit of a friend finder. You load the app, you get this ambient awareness of where your friends are, what they're doing, what they've done. It's a little bit of a social city guide. So it's GPS aware, recognizes what's around you, and we recommend that you do certain things based on your check-in history and your friend's check-in history. And you use game mechanics to tie it all together. So you can earn points for checking in somewhere for the first time, checking in somewhere with 10 of your friends, checking in somewhere the 20th time during the night. You can compete against your friends and your entire city as well. So Foursquare is all about three things: discovery, encouragement, and what we'll talk about today, loyalty, in a very big sense.
Now, Lexi Reese talked about this earlier, and one of the kind of hooks about deals, the way they're evolving, is that kind of serendipity and discovery. So that's why I say it plugs right in. Now, you also mentioned game mechanics, and from the beginning, Foursquare, one thing or one of the many things that I respect about your business is that it's been very adamant in the contention that we're early movers in this check-in space, or pioneered this check-in space, but can't be resting on our laurels in terms of, one, having the check-in be the end. It's really more of a means to an end. And then two, the other kind of value exchanges for users. There's badges, there's mayorships, but really evolving into something that is of more monetary significance, as some of those other things might lose novelty, though they're still central to the service. So one of the ways that's playing out is through specials. So can you kind of briefly, again, for those unfamiliar, talk about the specials and really from the merchant perspective, how are they managed, set up, and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So, Foursquare does a few things very, very well. We want to be the best-in-class tool to help you find where your friends are, collect the history of all the places you've been, get recommendations of places to visit in the city, and we want to be the best tool for merchants to engage and communicate with their customers. We take this view on the space, particularly for merchants, that we really want to redefine what loyalty means for merchants. And what we mean by that is, I think a lot of folks in the space have really misconstrued this idea of loyalty offers with loyalty holistically.
Sure.
And I like to explain that through an anecdote. And folks who've seen me speak before hear this anecdote all the time, but I love to stress it. So there's a place in Palo Alto called University Cafe, and I've been there every single day now for the past 28 weeks, with the exception of my traveling. And I've never received a deal from University Cafe ever. The only reason I go back every single day is because Sam remembers my name and my order. And it's a service that I'd pay 200, 300% for.
Yep.
And what we like to say at Foursquare is if we can replicate that nostalgic, remember your name and order type of loyalty that I think 100% of consumers really want, then I think we have something really, really special. So when you think about the tools that we provide for merchants, when you really boil it down, they care about two things. It's acquisition and retention. It's not about engagement or impressions or any of that stuff. It's how can I get new customers walking through the door, and how can I get loyal customers coming back? And everything that Foursquare tries to focus on is to really aid them in those two regards. So we have specials on the acquisition side to help them acquire those new customers. On the retention side, a fairly robust analytics dashboard to help them learn a little bit more about their customers so that they can communicate with them in a way that's meaningful.
Yeah, and I think there's been too much attention on the acquisition side and not enough on the loyalty side. So I think that you're doing that now. I want to also point out, in your 3.0 release, you kind of put more definition around these specials, because previously it was a little ambiguous from the part of the merchant how I use Foursquare. I mean, someone comes in and says they're the mayor. I can create a mayor discount or a mayor special, excuse me. But you've kind of broadened that. There's swarm specials, there's friend specials, flash specials, and there's 7 of them, and they're very well defined. Now, from the perspective of the merchant, does that make it easier for them to be able to say, okay, I'm a restaurant, I'm working on retention versus loyalty, or I'm a bowling alley and I'm more interested in loyalty? Really broadening that, and how are you kind of communicating that value proposition to different types of businesses through the different types of deals?
Sure. So we, when a merchant kind of self-serve claims their venue on Foursquare and they're taking this route to run specials on their platform, we're very clear, are your goals customer acquisition or is it customer retention? And we'll send them through the appropriate routes to really help them in that regard. I think the thing that's really, really important, again, when we talk about this idea of retention holistically, like getting a deal every 5 times you visit, that's not retention. I really still think that that's acquisition. So again, like we kind of separate our specials from things like analytics that can really drive that retention and provide actionable insights to run the specials that are actually beneficial to your business.
Now, you announced recently that you have 500,000 small businesses, or just merchants overall, that are on the service, which has ramped up really quickly. If you look at
it was 900 last year. This time,
900 to 500,000 in a year. Now, well, 2 things actually. 1, what's the breakdown of kind of the mom and pops versus kind of the Radio Shacks of the world? And then 2, for the mom and pops, what type of education are you providing? Back to your earlier point about what type of deal is best for you.
Yeah, so on the actual retail versus like sole proprietor individual stuff, it's actually really difficult to parse, right? Because you claim your venue, you can be running, particularly if you're an agency, you could be running a deal for a subset of Radio Shack venues and also a subset of Whole Foods venues, and then sole proprietor shops. So it's really actually a really difficult thing to parse. But we're trying to acquire those learnings at least internally.
No, in those 2 constituencies, you've walked a fine line with the dashboard, which is actually right behind you, which I think is pretty powerful in that it's the simplicity that a lot of mom and pops need, and our research data shows that over and over again, but then also kind of the levers and the gears that they need to kind of see what they're doing and iterate on it. Now, have you thought about kind of integrating a Foursquare Pro for the Radio Shack marketing executive who's doing all of that might have more time and ability to kind of have a more robust interaction and platform than the average restaurant owner?
I think there's a possibility. I think our goal is to get everyone the data that makes sense for them. The impetus behind doing this is actually really interesting. So when I met Dennis for the first time, we had a lot of merchants just running specials on their own. And I told Dennis, before we even run the specials platform, we need to get this analytics dashboard in there. And he said, why, Tristan? Why is that the case? And I said, Dennis, do you watch movies? And he said, yes. And then I said, are you familiar with this really familiar scene in movies where there's a chef of a really nice restaurant? He walks out, finds the wealthy-looking guy, shakes his hand, and thanks for his patronage. Like it's a pretty familiar scene. And I always wondered, how does that chef not know that the guy sitting next to that wealthy-looking guy is the guy that's brought 20 customers to your venue? Is the guy that spends $100 every single day? Is the guy that evangelizes the service more than anyone else at your venue? And what I say is, if we can provide that chef with tools to shake the other guy's hand, then we've done something really interesting. And again, it goes back to measuring the recency, the frequency, and the value of your customer segment. And then introducing those merchants to the top customers, contributing to the bulk of their profitability, value, et cetera. And I think those needs are the same for the sole proprietor or the Radio Shacks.
That's interesting, and I'm thinking about your dashboard and visualizing it because I've used it before to set up specials to kind of see what it's like. And you actually show the last however many people that checked in there, which brings in, I don't think it's on this shot, but it brings in interesting implications for targeting those kind of influencers, because that comes with the data from someone who has a certain amount of friends on Foursquare. A check-in is a certain amount of impressions to their social graph.
Yeah, the thing that's really interesting to take note, you look at folks like CVS and Safeway, among others, they've really nailed the recency, frequency, value use case. Right? Like their sole purpose is to find the top 20% of customers contributing to 80% of their value. When you look at my University Cafe scenario, they've never had any idea about my recency. They've never had any idea about my frequency, and they sure as hell have had no idea about my value. And again, when you think about the opportunity in terms of the data set that we can provide back to those merchants to provide those actionable insights, and we have something that's really, really unique.
And the concept of rewarding your best customers and then utilizing them as evangelists for you, I think is really starting to pick up. We're going to hear from Perry Evans at Closely later in a demo, who is doing some interesting things around that. So let's move on. We've talked so far about the merchant end of things. Let's talk about the user end of things. And right here I have the Explore tab, and this is a new feature in your version 3.0. And I think this is emblematic. The reason I'm bringing this up is how you're more and more utilizing different data sets to be smarter, to suggest, and to be that discovery engine that we talked about earlier. So not just where I just checked in as a binary thing or that's where I am and maybe implications of what I might be interested in. But what were my last 20 check-ins, and what does that say about me? And then also where have my friends checked in? So what are those data sets that you're currently utilizing, and where do you see that going to be just a smarter engine?
Yeah, so we have over 750 million check-ins on our platform today.
Yep.
We said, how can we take that data that we have inherent to our system, feed it back to our users in a way that's beneficial to them?
Yep.
So then we decided to launch this Explore tab that'll give you personalized recommendations of things you should be doing in your city, in whatever city you're in. So I could load this up, I can click on coffee, and I'll get these personal recommendations. That'll be markedly different from your own if you did it in the same location. So we take that check-in data set and really give a compelling discovery experience for our users that we think is really compelling.
Now, I think I know the answer in terms of anecdotally and just from being a Foursquare user, but within the Explore tab, what would you say is the prevalence of specials showing up versus other just kind of organic suggestions? And not that specials aren't organic, but what's kind of, to put it in kind of advertiser terms, like you getting to some sort of a fill rate, or how often are you seeing?
Well, so the interesting thing, and this is, I guess, one of the older slides, so our fault for sending this. But
no,
we've actually,
I pulled it. That's my fault. I pulled it.
We've moved specials into Explore. So right next to food, you would see a specials tab that you can click.
Okay.
And then, the reason why that's really important is now you're getting specials that are tailored to you, and we'll give you the justifications as to why you're getting that. So, when we think about, particularly for the context of today, with our Daily Deals partnership and working with folks like Living Social, Guild City, Buy With Me, among others.
I want to get into that in a minute,
it's really taking this kind of specials experience and targeting it in a way that's really more beneficial to our user base.
Yep. So let's talk about the MX partnership. I want to get back to the new partnerships with AT&T and Guild and Living Social. I think those are some good areas to get into. So we heard from Lexi Reese earlier, and they obviously just formed a deal with Amex. It's slightly differently structured. You guys have had this for a little while. It was trialed at South by Southwest, and then recently kind of rolled out nationally. And there are a lot of great implications here in terms of tying the deal to the transaction. So that alleviates long-standing redemption issues on the part of the merchant and tracking. That's often, especially for the small guys, that's a challenge. And then for the user, of course, having that seamless, they don't have to print anything out. So talk a little bit more about what you're doing with Amex, where you hope it to go, and what are some of the retail partners, where that will go, and just kind of...
Yeah, so this is something I've been excited about for a while. Ever since I started at Dennis, I said, there are two things I want to do for the company. Integrate with major grocery retail chain and then American Express. And Dennis was like, that's not going to happen. And I said, yeah, give me 10 years. And we actually did it. And the reason why I wanted to work with American Express is really to solve two very big problems. Two very, very, very big problems. Number one, we wanted to completely fix the redemption experience.
Yep.
Right? This idea of showing your phone to redeem a deal, it sucks, right? It sucks for the consumer. You don't know if the cashier knows what you're talking about. There are 10 people behind you in line. You don't want to look like an idiot. It sucks for the cashier to know that they might not know what you're talking about. And when you think about folks like a Starbucks with tens of thousands of venues, tens of thousands of more employees, and 150% turnover, it becomes really unwieldy and costly. Yeah, it's awful, right? So we wanted to completely fix it, make it seamless, frictionless, and magical in a sense. And I think secondly, and probably more importantly, now we can start to show merchants the value of their offline advertising. Right? So again, when I talked about this idea of engagement and impressions really don't matter, it's like, how can you really come to an effective ROI for these guys? So if 1,000 people see your special on Foursquare nearby, 500 people checking after the fact, 250 people actually load this deal and redeem that deal, you start to see how we provide, again, when I talk about this idea of recency, frequency, value data sets, now we have the value data set.
Right.
That's really interesting. So the way it works, you would go to American Express portals, particularly after you log in on AmericanExpress.com. And connect your Foursquare account to your Amex credit card. So we were really the first time a third-party service has been linked to a credit card. And then now as I'm out and about exploring my city, I'll get unique deals from Amex merchants. So an H&M might say, if you check in and spend $75 using your Amex, you get a $10 statement credit. So I'll check in, hit that big green button that says load to card to opt into that deal. And then I would go to the cashier, swipe my card, pay full price, 30 seconds later, get a push notification on my phone saying, Tristan, thank you for your purchase, $78.04. Expect a $10 statement credit 2 to 3 days later. Now, when things get really interesting, it's not only for the merchant context, But you think about things like grocery retail, right? And this idea of load to cart is something that they're very familiar with. So, how many folks are actually loading the Coke deal to their card? How many folks are loading the Pepsi deal to their card? What redemption path are they actually taking? And again, like the only thing that we would really want to nail and focus on is really getting to this recency frequency value data set and providing it back in an actionable way.
Absolutely. So let's move on to now, because we're kind of quickly running out of time. The most recent deal, and you alluded to this earlier, in addition to your specials that you're sourcing directly through SMBs that are self-serving, you now have brought in partners, including AT&T, Gilt, Living Social, and a couple others, to really augment that existing kind of deal structure with now the more kind of upfront payment type of deal that gets delivered kind of in a similar discovery ways that we were talking about earlier. What more is there to this? And
yeah. So these guys have done a really fantastic job getting the best possible deals for consumers. I mean, I'll be the first to admit that. And they've really nailed the acquisition use case.
Yep.
Right? And again, what I try to focus on is really on the retention use case. And we want to be the best-in-class tool for retention. But again, we do some things that are really, really well. And when you think about deals, it would be naive and it wouldn't be to our users' benefit to not provide them high-quality deals in our system. So we decided to work with Living Social, Buy With Me, Gilt City, Zozy, and AT&T on distributing their deals onto our platform. So they're all building on top of our platform to distribute these deals. The difference here is the context, right? It's not only is it location-based context, but because we've moved this into Explore, we will kind of recommend that you do certain deals based on your check-in profile and give you the social justifications as to why you should be redeeming them. So if you see a Living Social deal, why should you do it? 15 of your friends have been here. You have a to-do here. Oh, and by the way, we know that you actually have never been here before, right? So that's a context that really has not existed until we actually launched it. And I think we want to really do targeting in a way that nobody's really thought of, and I think we have the platform to enable a lot of that.
Now, do you disclose how this deal is structured financially? I mean, is it a rev share with these partners?
There is a rev share, but we just don't disclose the actual terms themselves.
Now, are you also kind of filtering the deals in a selective manner instead of their entire universe of deals, but those that might be more conducive to the verticals where you shine and or more conducive to that kind of local use case?
Every single deal that is distributed on their platform that you can actually redeem in the real world is distributed on our application.
Okay. So it's the whole...
Yeah, so the actual filtering happens with our recommendations.
With Explorer.
Exactly.
Okay, very good.
Exactly.
So we're almost out of time. I kind of want to ask you, just based on where you are now and where you've come from, and I have this, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the badge. You guys already have a check-in from space.
Yeah.
So after that, what's next?
Expansion plans, Mars.
Right. Yeah. So everyone talks about expanding. Your user base has grown pretty quickly, and kind of the challenge in getting into the mainstream versus the kind of 20 and 30 something urban foodies. Is that a matter of making check-ins easier and utilizing the signals that are coming from these evolving smartphones to do things, to suggest things that are more intuitive, or automatic check-ins? Lots of things that are being speculated. What are the areas you're excited about?
Yeah, so we just all the time we're focusing on how can we make the user interface better, user experience better. And I think with that will come the users. But also, the one thing to really keep in mind, particularly when I think about my own job, is how can we partner with folks to really help us get to that scale in a way that's meaningful. So you look at American Express with 90 million cardholders and the many millions of merchants that they have. How do we get from 500,000 merchants to 10 million? Yeah. Right? How do we get from X amount of deals in our platform to X million number of deals in our platform? Folks like Living Social and Gilt City aid us in that regard. And on the consumer side, again, American Express scaling with their 90 million, among others, right? Starwood Hotels, et cetera. Sure. So I don't think we want to be naive to think that we have to do this alone. And we could work with folks that really believe in our platform, understand the value proposition, understand it's additive to the experience they provide to consumers, and then help us scale in a way that's meaningful.
Sure. So last question, and on the advertiser end of things, in terms of scaling, and what you mentioned about partnerships, it's often argued that to really scale in the local space, you need the kind of feet on the street. And you guys have such a powerful proposition in your self-serve dashboard. But to augment that, are you guys thinking towards working with local resellers, the kind of local media companies that have been around traditionally for years that have that feet on the street?
Yeah, so if you look at, there's a couple of ways to answer that question. So certainly when you think about prepaid deals, folks like Living Social,
Yep, there you
et
go.
cetera. But we also launched a merchant API last week, partnering with folks like Citigrid Media, actually AT&T as well, Yext,
nice.
Hatch, among others. And these guys already have sales forces, and they can put this in front of their merchants
It's a great
as well.
channel.
And the best possible channel in terms of salespeople are our users. Right?
Yeah.
And we have this unique thing that happens where I think this is the big reason why we scaled from 900 to 500,000, where a user obnoxiously walks into University Cafe, looks at the manager, says, "I'm the mayor, give me something for free." Right? And that happens enough times. The manager says, "What is this Foursquare thing?" They'll go to their venue, see 300 unique people have checked in, and then really figure out, hey, here are 300 unique people I haven't been able to engage with. Here's the opportunity to do so. So I think a mix of those three will really get us there in a way that's meaningful, and I don't think you absolutely need feet on the street to do that, but we're going to experiment with all those ways to figure it out.
Okay. Well, we're out of time, and you're going to be around for part of the rest of the day to talk to people. Okay,
absolutely.
I'm sure you're going to get swarmed at some point. But
no, it's all good.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you guys.
Please join me in thanking Tristan.
All righty.